Well, they were back at the site today to begin work on another new dig.
The team wants to find out more about the medieval church where he was buried.
Scientists have finally identified remains believed to belong to King Midas, and the truth is far more disturbing than the myth. Hidden beneath central Turkey, the bones reveal poisoning, deformity, and a kingdom collapsing around him. The real Midas wasn't blessed by gold. He was destroyed by it, piece by piece. The unearthed bones. They found the burial chamber in the quiet plains of central Turkey, a timber-lined vault sealed since the late 8th century BCE. At first, it resembled any elite Phrygian tomb, but the skeleton inside brought silence, exceptionally preserved, the kind of care reserved for kings. Artifacts surrounded the body, a finely carved drinking vessel, a bronze ceremonial bowl, a throne-like bench with red pigment still clinging to its legs. Each item whispered status, ritual, and power. Their craftsmanship matched Greek descriptions of Phrygian royalty, accounts from Herodotus to Strabo that spoke of elaborate rites and rulers' graves. Radiocarbon dating narrowed it further. The timeline aligned precisely with King Midas and his royal lineage. The tomb's design, its sloped roof, timber braces, and careful offerings matched classical descriptions of Phrygia's greatest burials. Every detail fit the legend. But what it revealed wasn't treasure, no gold, no miracle, just a ruler laid to rest in quiet dignity. One archaeologist murmured, maybe the real Midas wasn't the man the myths imagined. And as they prepared to analyze the remains further, the clues waiting in the chamber led directly toward the next revelation, the royal banquet, where the king's final meal revealed more about his life, wealth, and downfall than any ancient myth ever recorded. The royal banquet. When researchers studied the pottery near the body, they weren't expecting to find a royal recipe, but chemical traces told a vivid tale. Lamb, lentils, spiced grains, and a honeyed wine stew. A final feast, rich, ceremonial, and carefully prepared before the tomb was sealed. Luxury frozen in time, one whispered. Isotope analysis of the bones confirmed it. The man had lived on an elite protein-rich diet, rare in 8th century BCE Anatolia. His meals were regular and ritualized, echoing ancient accounts of Midas's legendary feasts. Even the wine showed traces of ceremonial herbs used in Phrygian rites, suggesting toasts or blessings were part of the burial. But the clearest sign of royalty wasn't in the food, it was on the walls. Scorch marks blackened the timber, evidence of a purification fire lit before burial, a rare rite reserved for rulers. They honored him with flame, not gold, an archaeologist said. The feast, the fire, the chamber, all mirrored the world Greek historians described, a kingdom of opulence, ritual, and reverence. But while the feast reflected status, the bones held something deeper, truths the myths had never told. Those answers emerged in the next stage, the DNA shock, the moment genetic evidence linked these remains directly to the ruling bloodline of Phrygia. The DNA shock. The turning point came when researchers realized the bones still held preserved collagen, enough for full genetic sequencing, a rare gift from the 8th century BCE. When results appeared, the lab went silent. These weren't random markers. They traced back to a known lineage from Iron Age Anatolia. This profile belongs to a ruling family, one geneticist whispered. The genome revealed clear ties to Indo-European ancestry, dominant in Phrygia. The patterns matched elite burials from Gordion, the capital of Midas's kingdom. It wasn't just related, it was direct. Cross-checks with decades of excavated remains revealed tight genetic clustering. This was royal blood. Age estimates narrowed it further. Joint wear, cranial fusion, and metabolic markers pointed to a man in his mid-50s to early 60s, aligning with Midas's lifespan during his reign. Coupled with the elite diet, imposing stature, and monumental burial, the identification grew harder to ignore. Then came the clincher. Mitochondrial DNA linked him to high-status individuals from the Phrygian court. Not a distant cousin, a central figure, possibly the central figure. Still, a question remained. Was this Midas or his father? Radiocarbon dates straddled both, but the weight of evidence, timeline, genetics, tomb structure, pointed in one direction. This was either the king of myth or the man who made him. As the team prepared to announce their findings, the truth hung heavy. A historical ghost had stepped into the light. Not a legend, not a fable, someone with a name. And once identity was established, one deeper question remained: how the legend of the Golden Touch began. That answer waited in the next revelation, the Golden Myth, where industrial innovation, not magic, sparked one of history's most enduring stories. The Golden Myth. For nearly 2,700 years, the Midas touch has symbolized greed and myth. But evidence from the burial site tells a different story, one grounded in industry, not magic. Ancient Greek writers often exaggerated foreign kings to make moral points. Midas became a fable, but new inscriptions near the tomb offer clarity. As one archaeologist put it, the gold wasn't magic, it was industry. Phrygia, under Midas, was a metallurgical hub. Rich in gold, electrum, and copper, the kingdom developed refining techniques far ahead of its time. Excavations at Gordion show early workshops, labs of ancient innovation. Newly translated texts reveal that Midas personally funded these operations, accelerating gold production and triggering an economic surge. To outsiders, especially Greek traders, this kingdom of endless metal seemed enchanted. Stories grew, a king who turned all to gold. In truth, it was technological edge, not alchemy. One historian quipped, "The Greeks didn't understand his factories, so they made him divine." The tomb confirms it. Tool fragments, ore traces, and ceremonial items marked by craftsmanship, not mysticism. Midas wasn't a wizard, he was a builder. His golden touch was infrastructure. But progress came at a cost. The same forges that fueled Phrygia's rise also exposed its people to toxins: mercury, lead, arsenic. The price of innovation was steep. And as researchers looked closer at the bones, they realized the legend hid something far darker than magic: the physical cost of a golden empire. That truth emerges in the next chapter, Signs of a Disturbing Decline, where the king's body reveals the price he paid for the wealth that made him immortal in story. Signs of a disturbing decline. The first sign of trouble was in the joints. Deep grooves and swelling revealed crippling arthritis, likely an autoimmune disease late in life. He must have lived in constant pain, one osteologist whispered, but deeper in the bone, the story darkened. Chemical analysis showed long-term exposure to arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals, exact matches to those used in Phrygia's gold refining workshops. For a king who oversaw these operations, the connection was clear and deadly. Chronic exposure to these toxins can cause neurological decay, tremors, hallucinations, and slow organ failure. The madness later tied to Midas in Greek myth suddenly had a biological basis. Tiny lesions in the bone pointed to metabolic stress, not a fast death, but a slow unraveling. Poisoned air, contaminated vessels, years of unseen damage. His wealth didn't just build his kingdom, a researcher noted. It destroyed his body. Even the skull told a story. Deformities near the jaw and ears hinted at systemic toxicity, subtle, corrosive, and cumulative. The image sharpened. This was no mythic fall. This was a man undone by his own creation. The legend of Midas, the king who turned all to gold, gave way to a harsher truth. He wasn't defeated by enemies or fate, but by the byproducts of his own ambition. His decline was not poetic, it was chemical, and it mirrored the same pattern seen throughout history: greatness laced with the seeds of ruin. And as researchers followed the environmental clues inside the tomb, they uncovered the larger truth. Phrygia itself was dying alongside its king. That story emerges next in the kingdom's collapse, where climate, famine, and royal mismanagement joined to bring an empire to its knees. The kingdom's collapse. The soil inside the tomb told its own story, one of a kingdom already faltering. Pollen samples from the wooden beams showed a sharp drop in crop diversity during the late 8th century BCE. Wheat, barley, and pulses declined, replaced by drought-resistant weeds. This isn't a fluctuation, one analyst said. This is a system breaking. Sediment layers revealed severe drought had gripped central Anatolia, eroding topsoil and gutting harvests. Phrygia's strength, its population and industry, depended on stable agriculture. Without rain, the foundation crumbled. Even storage jars near the chamber held spoiled grain, thick with mold. This wasn't a bad season, it was famine. External records echoed the collapse. Assyrian texts described Phrygia as weakened and unable to send tribute, years before the Sumerians arrived. In his final days, Midas wasn't ruling a golden empire. He was holding together a starving one. Worse, the crisis may have been accelerated by royal priorities. Massive resources had gone to metal production and trade, not food security. When drought came, there were no reserves, no resilience. They built wealth, one historian said, not stability. Even the tomb reflected that desperation. Grain offerings were sparse, woodwork rushed. The burial felt pressured, less ceremony, more necessity. Midas's body bore the poisons of his industry, his land, the scars of environmental collapse. Together, they told a single story, a kingdom undone from within. And it set the stage for something even more unsettling inside the tomb. The ritual that went wrong, where the treatment of the body revealed a death surrounded by fear, urgency, and contamination. The ritual that went wrong. The burial chamber, once thought a site of honor, told a different story, one of fear. The first clue was the body itself. Instead of the traditional Phrygian pose, serene and supine, the skeleton was hunched, limbs drawn tight. Microfractures along the ribs and arms suggested rough handling after death. They weren't performing a ritual, one anthropologist murmured. They were containing something. The chamber's ceiling confirmed it. Thick layers of resin coated the walls, far heavier than in standard royal tombs. Resin this dense wasn't ceremonial, it was preventative, meant to trap something, spiritual, symbolic, or biological. Then came the burn marks, charred timber near the throne. Purification fires weren't meant to be lit so close to the dead. But here, flames had scorched within centimeters of the remains. A desperate cleansing, not a sacred rite. Tool marks on the beams, uneven, rushed, burnt, suggested a burial under duress. This wasn't royal pageantry, it was crisis control. Even the offerings felt wrong, sparse, symbolic. Famine was likely ravaging the land, and the king, riddled with toxins, may have been seen not as a blessing but a threat, an omen, a curse. This wasn't ceremony, one archaeologist concluded. This was containment. And the Greeks, hearing whispers generations later, twisted this fear into myth. Their stories of deformity and shame came from a much older truth, one revealed next in the Greek account Revisited, where the donkey ears legend hides a startling medical reality. The Greek account Revisited. The Greek tale of Midas and his donkey ears was never about transformation. It was a misunderstanding. When researchers examined the skull, they found subtle deformities near the ear canal. These irregularities aligned with conditions like Paget's disease or inherited cartilage disorders, common in the Iron Age. The myth wasn't random, one researcher said. It was anatomy misread as humiliation. Bone thickening around the temporal region suggested chronic inflammation, likely worsened by long-term exposure to lead and arsenic, toxins from gold refining. Over time, swelling and cartilage distortion may have altered Midas's ears, a change his court tried to conceal. In ancient societies, physical deformity in a ruler was taboo. Whispers grew. The Greeks, hearing of a king who hid his ears, turned secrecy into satire. Writers like Aristotle reimagined the story as moral comedy. What was likely a painful medical condition became a punchline, a metaphor for failed judgment. But the remains tell another story. Midas wasn't cursed. He was ill, poisoned by his own legacy, disfigured by his own ambition. The donkey ears weren't divine punishment. They were the scars of industrial progress. The Greeks saw deformity and made a joke, one historian reflected. His people saw deformity and made a secret. And behind that secret lay something far darker, the manner of his death. The bones held an even more disturbing truth, one uncovered in the next revelation, the disturbing truth, where evidence suggests the king's final act may have been a deliberate escape from a kingdom falling apart beneath him. The disturbing truth. The toxicology results were the final break and the most disturbing. Deep within the bone cortex, researchers found arsenic levels far too high for accidental exposure. This wasn't inhaled, it was ingested. This level only appears when someone takes the poison directly, one forensic expert said quietly. Suddenly, ancient records made sense. In times of invasion or collapse, Phrygian kings sometimes chose ritual suicide over surrender. The timing fit. Late 8th century BCE, the Sumerians advancing, famine sweeping the land, Midas's health deteriorating from years of metal poisoning. A king faced with the fall of his dynasty may have chosen control over defeat.
The bones told more. The toxic spike pointed to a single, massive dose, likely a metallurgical mix the king knew well. Poison not as betrayal, but as decision.
The chamber reflected the fear. Burn marks near the body showed rites performed in haste. The resin seal, unusually thick, spoke of panic, an urgent attempt to contain something feared. In Phrygian ritual, poison demanded purification. Fractures near the ribs and limbs suggested the body was moved roughly, perhaps urgently. This wasn't a royal farewell. It was crisis, ritual, containment. All the pieces fell into place. A poisoned king, a starving kingdom, a death by choice, not fate. A burial steeped in urgency, not honor. One archaeologist put it simply, the legend says he turned things to gold. The truth is, gold turned on him. And with that revelation came the final question. Why take so long to release these findings? That answer unfolds in the next chapter, the final revelation, where the truth proves so uncomfortable that even modern scientists hesitated to bring it to the world. The final revelation. When the research team assembled their findings, they realized they weren't just rewriting a legend. They were reshaping a cornerstone of Western storytelling. The real Midas wasn't a miracle worker or a greedy fool. He was a poisoned ruler, undone by the very industry that made his kingdom powerful. One researcher admitted quietly, "The truth is heavier than the myth." The environmental collapse revealed in pollen and soil samples showed a kingdom already dying. The toxins in his bones showed a ruler breaking from within. The distorted skull revealed a medical condition twisted by Greek writers into centuries of ridicule. And the overwhelming arsenic concentration pointed unmistakably to suicide, a detail ancient historians hinted at but never confirmed. It was not the glorious or tragic end storytellers imagined. It was a chemical death at the edge of a collapsing empire. This narrative of mismanagement, ecological fragility, industrial poisoning, and ritual desperation was far darker than the familiar tale of a king with a magical touch. It painted Phrygia not as a wealthy's golden realm, but as a kingdom stretched beyond its limits, brought down by environmental stress, toxic industry, and political fear. Scientists hesitated to release the findings for one reason. The truth was deeply uncomfortable. It touched on sensitive topics: suicide, disease, corruption, environmental failure, and risked being misinterpreted or sensationalized. It challenged long-cherished myths, reframed Greek narratives as propaganda, and exposed ancient power structures in ways that echoed too loudly with modern parallels. There were debates behind closed doors. Would revealing that Midas died by his own hand spark controversy? Would acknowledging his deformities invite unnecessary ridicule? Would linking his downfall to environmental collapse be seen as political commentary? One team member said, "We feared people would hear the myth, not the science." But ultimately, the evidence was undeniable. His kingdom fell not because of magic lost, but because of choices made. And Midas himself, so often reduced to a moral fable, emerged as a real, fragile human being, shaped by ambition, poisoned by industry, and crushed by the weight of a dying empire. In the end, the truth was released cautiously, because the story of King Midas is disturbing not for its legend, but for how closely the real world once mirrored the myth. The discovery rewrites everything we thought we knew. Midas wasn't a legend, he was a ruler poisoned by his own industry, trapped in a failing kingdom, and remembered through distorted stories. His tomb exposes a human truth darker than any myth, and now, the real story can no longer be ignored.